What if I told you that your total testosterone isn't the problem, but rather how much of it you can actually use? You see, most of your testosterone is bound to special proteins like SHBG and albumin, meaning that your body can actually use it. But only a small fraction, 1 to 3%, is what we call free testosterone. And free testosterone is what drives your strength, libido, performance, mood, and recovery. Basically, everything that you need if you are a person who wants to be active or you're already an athlete. So, even if your total testosterone is high, if your free T is low, you might actually still experience symptoms of low testosterone, like low drive, low sex drive, and even hitting plateaus in the gym. Does this sound familiar? Don't worry, because today I will tell you how to increase your free testosterone for performance, hormonal regulation, and mental health. First, let me tell you why you want higher free T. Free T directly stimulates muscle protein synthesis. Higher free T supports the breakdown of fat. Free testosterone has a strong correlation with sexual desire, morning wood, and overall sexual performance. And free T supports dopamine, motivation, and mental clarity. Anyways, now that we know that, let's look at the two most important aspects or variables that influences free testosterone. And the first variable, or protein, let's say, is sex hormone binding globulin. Sex hormone binding globulin is a protein produced in the liver that binds to sex hormones like testosterone and estradiol. Why does this matter? Because sex hormone binding globulin actually inhibits the availability of free testosterone. In other words, high levels of sex hormone binding globulin means lower free testosterone and even maybe low total testosterone. And the second variable that reduces the availability of free testosterone is estrogen, or specifically estradiol. Because if you have high amount of estradiol, which is the main form of estrogen, it actually can raise sex hormone binding globulin levels. So, in other words, high estradiol means high sex hormone binding globulin, which means low free testosterone. So, when sex hormone binding globulin and estradiol is high, and you find out through blood tests, and you also find out that your free testosterone is low, you can actually increase free T by lowering sex hormone binding globulin and estradiol. And this point requires a whole different video. So I'm just going to be focusing on sex hormone binding globulin in this one. So now that we know that sex hormone binding globulin and estradiol influences the amount of free testosterone we have, or the amount that is bioavailable or available for use, let's look at ways on how we can actually lower sex hormone binding globulin. And we'll do this naturally. Or we'll find simple ways to reduce sex hormone binding globulin. The first thing we can do in order to reduce sex hormone binding globulin is actually eat more dietary fats, especially saturated and monosaturated fats, which are found in eggs, red meat, avocado, olive oil, all of that. And this is important because low fat diets are often correlated with high SHBG levels. The second thing, don't go for extremely low carb diets, like the carnivore, for example. That's quite a popular one that people are doing now. And without them even knowing, they're actually increasing their sex hormone binding globulin levels. They're actually increasing it. So the amount of free testosterone that they can actually use is actually lower. And this is also very important if you are a person who fasts regularly. You need to keep on top of your carb intake on the days that you're not fasting. So I'm on about for those people who do it weekly. If you fast weekly, make sure that you eat enough carbs to prepare yourself for the next fast. Otherwise, your sex hormone binding globulin levels will rise. The third thing that we can do to actually reduce sex hormone binding globulin levels is actually to eat at a calorie maintenance, or in a slight surplus around that sort of range, maintenance or a slight surplus, not too much, and not an extreme deficit or just deficit in general, to be honest. Unless you're someone who is trying to lose fat, which is a price you're gonna have to like pay for a bit. You know, you're gonna have to sacrifice that sort of thing for. It's just temporary though, so it's not as bad. It's not that bad if you're doing it temporarily, because you can restore your SHBG levels rather quickly. It only takes a few months to get back into check. But anyway, ideally, stay at maintenance, or if you're bulking, do a slight surplus. Not too much, obviously. We know the pros and cons of doing, what's it called? It's dirty bulk. It's a bit different. A dirty bulk. Don't do that. Especially if you're natural. You can't actually, you shouldn't be doing that. It is not viable, and you'll just be building unnecessary fat. You'll be accumulating unnecessary fat around your body. Another thing you should do to increase free testosterone by lowering SHBG is optimize thyroid function. You don't want to have an overactive thyroid or an underactive thyroid, because that will just raise your SHBG levels. And if you have an overactive or underactive thyroid function, you're more likely to raise cortisol, which we know it acts as an antagonist of testosterone. So high cortisol means low testosterone for both free and total. We want to keep that at a minimal. We don't want a lot of cortisol, and there are ways to minimize that. So yeah, we don't want high cortisol levels. We don't want that at all. And if your SHBG levels are high, you should be getting more blood tests done anyway to see what's actually causing it. So it might not be the estradiol or estrogen affecting it. That's one of the variables that affects SHBG. It could also be due to an overactive thyroid. Too much is happening around your throat. I say like a hormonal level, and there are many things that influence it. But let's go on to the last point. The last point, perhaps the most important variable in order to lower SHBG and increase free testosterone, and that is by fixing micronutrient deficiencies. It is by fixing micronutrient deficiencies that we can lower SHBG and increase free testosterone. It's probably the most important because majority of people are deficient in vitamins and minerals. The majority of people are. And just by fixing one of these, vitamins, I'm gonna list them. Just by fixing one vitamin, it can actually have an impact on your whole body. Like just by one vitamin that you're deficient in, you can fix your body. You can fix whatever's going wrong in your body just by fixing one deficient. By fixing one vitamin and mineral. Now I'm just going to list the 4 most important vitamins and minerals that has an effect on sex hormone binding globulin levels. And the first being boron. Boron has actually been shown to increase free testosterone by lowering sex hormone binding globulin. You should aim for an intake of around 6 to 10 milligrams per day of boron. And you can find boron in raisins, hazelnuts, avocados, almonds, apricots, many foods. But a lot of people, I'd say 90% of people, they are deficient in boron. And a lot of people don't even know what boron is. But if you eat a lot of nuts and a lot of fruits like peaches and apricots and such, you should be fine. But majority of people don't even a lot of people don't even eat fruit anyway now, which is wild. I mean, the occasional banana, apple, orange, the sort of the main ones. But I want about a variety of fruits, and not a lot of people eat a variety of fruits anymore, as well as nuts. And if you're allergic to them, that's not your fault. But You know what I mean? The second most important vitamin, also known as a hormone, is vitamin D. Now, low levels of vitamin D has been associated with higher sex hormone binding globulin levels. And we obviously want to decrease SHBG in order to increase free testosterone. And you can get vitamin D by simply being outside in direct sunlight when the sunlight is in direct contact with your skin. And even on cloudy days, you can still start the production of vitamin D just by being outside. Even on cloudy days, you can still get your vitamin D because the rays they penetrate through the clouds by up to 90%. However, if you live in a colder climate or you have a darker skin tone, it's recommended to take a vitamin D supplement, especially vitamin D3, as that is the most active form of vitamin D. And you should aim for around 4,000 IUs per day in order for optimal health and performance. The third thing on our list is magnesium. Magnesium may help reduce SHBG. And again, a lot of people are deficient in this mineral. Another mineral a lot of people are deficient in because magnesium is found in nuts, spinach, quinoa, black beans, seeds, avocados, all of that. And you should aim for 400 micrograms per day, especially if you're an active individual. And finally, zinc. Zinc. Zinc is the most important mineral for testosterone production and even male reproductive health. It literally impacts the Leydig cells in the testes, which are responsible for testosterone synthesis. And again, a lot of people are deficient in this mineral. Another mineral a lot of people are deficient in because a lot of people now avoid red meat and oysters, which are the foods that have the highest amount of zinc. And you can get zinc through red meat and oysters, as well as poultry and eggs. And you should aim for 15 to 30 micrograms per day. And you should aim for the higher end if you're an active individual. I just want to say this now. You should be getting these vitamins and minerals through your diet, through whole foods. Supplementation should act as a final resort. It should be the absolute last, the trump card, the trump card. It should be the last thing you do if you cannot get a vitamin or mineral through diet. This is important if you are a vegetarian or vegan, or if you do decide to run the carnivore diet. Supplementation should act as a final resort, not the first thing you do in the morning. Here's a summary. 1 to 3% of testosterone is unbound, and this is called free testosterone. High sex hormone binding globulin means low free testosterone. You can lower sex hormone binding globulin by eating more dietary fats, eating moderate carbs, eating at maintenance or a slight surplus, by optimizing thyroid function, and by not being deficient in boron, magnesium, zinc, and vitamin D. Thank you.